it's not that we need to be driving towards fill in the blank size property management business. It's that we need to be driving towards the person who leads the fill in the blank size property management business. If I want a property management business doing $20 million a year in revenue, then how do I become the person first that acts like and thinks like and behaves like the $20 million a year gross revenue property management business owner?
Welcome to the Property Management Success Podcast, where we interview leaders in the industry to uncover the secrets to profitability, efficiency, and achieving true freedom, whether it's your time, money, or lifestyle. I'm your host, Tony Cline, and I'm here to help you build a wildly successful property management business. Let's get to it. Welcome back to another episode of the Property Management Aid Station here with Mark Brower and Tony Cline. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Tony?
I'm doing really well. It's an interesting time of the year where people are starting to get momentum, headed back into the new year, starting to get some routine back after the holidays. And it's interesting because some people will go full foot on the gas and start just trying to do everything possible, and other people kind of ease into it. Which one are you, do you think?
Well, I used to just go full on the gas with every random idea that came into my brain, and ended up diluting my focus and not, getting a little bit of a lot of things done, but not getting things across the finish line. So in recent years, I've tried to really focus on just one or two main things, and then when I notice getting distracted, just bring myself back until we really move the needle on that one or two things.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that I've been really good at in the holiday season is taking that time off. And in running, there's a couple of different ways that you can phrase things when you take time off. Some people will call those rest days, and that can imply that you're just doing nothing. You're taking time off, and it's a waste. I see runners that are afraid to take a time off because they've got a streak going and they want to keep their active streak so that they don't lose momentum. But for me, I look at it a little bit differently. I look at rest days, as active recovery days. And my coach got me into thinking that way, which is in an active recovery day, you are still being intentional about the activities that you're doing. You're just not doing your normal activities. And so from that standpoint, you're still moving closer to your goal, so you can still keep your streak alive, so to speak.
So how does that relate with property management, running a property management company? How do we take active recovery instead of sort of getting burned out and maybe resting on our laurels?
Yeah, I think a couple of ways. One thing, you and I have talked about what we do when we're out there running. And so when I'm running, one of the things that I do is very rarely do I listen to music, because I figure if I'm going to spend an hour or two out on the trail, that's my mobile university. So I'm listening to things that will help me with audiobooks, podcasts, YouTube videos that I've been able to download to the phone to listen to those. So I'm doing things in addition to what I would be doing, which is just running. So I'm trying to maximize the time that I spend. So even on my rest days where I'm doing active recovery, I'm doing things that intentionally move me closer to the goal. So in business, when you are taking time off, taking time away from the business, we need to be intentional about recovering and refreshing and coming back into the business ready to go.
So there's so what I'm hearing you saying, there's a type of resting which is actually rejuvenating, renewing ourselves, and there's another type of resting where it's just, we're sinking into a lower version of ourselves, maybe by just doing nothing or getting too comfortable. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll give you an example, a personal example, where I'm ashamed to admit, but there's been a few times where on a weekend, I'll go for my run. I get my run out of the way, and then I'll sit down in front of the TV and I'll just watch one episode of this show that I want to watch, which turns into 2 episodes, which turns into 3 episodes, which turns into 4 hours, which turns into I didn't get to binge the whole series, so I'm going to do that again on Sunday. And Monday rolls around and I'm like, what did I do with my weekend? Like I now feel worse that I took that time off. I didn't rejuvenate, I didn't recover. And so I think that that's really important to, when you take time away from the business, be intentional about coming back better. And that even includes like going on family vacation. Be intentional about being in the moment at that vacation, detaching yourself from the stress of work so that you can come back with a fresh mind and then tackle those issues that need to be tackled.
Yeah, but that's not practical for property managers. Let's be honest. A lot of us that got into this business crave so much stimulation. This business is a never-ending flow of like nonstop action, like the opposite of boring, right? So it's hard for some of us to unplug because we're in a dopamine deficit. You know, it's like, oh shoot. You know, I'm feeling a little stir crazy, a little anxious. Should be enjoying this time with my family. I'm not enjoying this time with my family. How do we take small breaks intentionally and come back stronger, Tony?
Well, I'm going to challenge you on the not practical piece, because I do think it's extremely practical. I think that people just need a system that will allow them to do that. And leaving a business to catch on fire, to put out fires when you come back, is a horrible idea, right? If you think every time I leave the business, the place is going to catch on fire and burn down, then you don't ever want to leave. So it's really about empowering your team, putting systems in place, setting standards, having your KPIs, having your policies, and having a team you can trust to be able to do that work in your absence. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I do think it's practical.
Yeah, I've found that over the years, as we've sort of gotten obsessed one little piece at a time about locking down this piece of the business and then really attending to that until it's in place. I'll give you a recent example. So I had a goal of answering every single phone call live, or at least 95% of phone calls live within 12 seconds. And with 600 properties under management, and growing, that's not an easy thing to do. And it drove me crazy. It was so hard to get that done. But eventually, once we dialed that in and someone owns that outcome and someone trains on that outcome all the time, and we're recording and measuring that outcome weekly, that little corner of our business is locked down now. And then I did that with all the different little pieces so far. And of course, we're always on that frontier of doing that next thing. But now that we've got those in place, it allows me to unplug and know that, hey, I've got a team and I've got a process that takes care of business, at least at the level we're at, that doesn't rely on me. So are you suggesting that's part of it? So for those of us that own property management businesses, we have to have a base foundation of systems and people in place so that we can unplug. Otherwise, the business is always active, living in our brains. Is that a piece of this?
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit on something. I want to circle back around because I missed it the first time you said it. But when you just made that comment, it made me think of this. There's a dopamine hit for property managers or property management company owners to deal with that stress, to be the problem solver. And I think some of us can get caught up in being the hero, even though we hate it, even though we're going to complain about it. When we step in and solve something, boy, we can puff up our chest and say, man, I solved that problem. Nobody else could have solved that. That's why I'm so important to my business. I can solve the day-to-day. I can talk to that tenant and talk them off the ledge. Boy, I'm really important. And I think sometimes we get caught up in creating an environment where, because we want to feel important, because we don't trust our team, we may say we trust our team, but your actions are showing you otherwise. So if we're constantly stepping in, then we're craving that dopamine hit and we're never going to step out of that.
Yep. Something you just said made me think of this triangle. Someone once taught me this framework of there's the hero, and then there's victim, and then there's villain, and then hero. And it's like if sometimes when we play the hero too long, right, or in an unhealthy way, eventually we fall off that pillar of being the hero and we go to the victim. And then we move from victim to villain, and then then we can be destructive in our relationships and our work, and maybe to be a little too aggressive, and then we feel remorseful for that, so we rise up and we're the hero again. So I think it's true for me and maybe others that are listening to this, that in property management we like being the hero, but also we have to be careful not to shift into that victim, right? That's a tendency in property management. Not my fault, not my problem. Why am I punching back for the owner and the tenant? And then moving over to the villain and maybe getting aggressive in some ways that are unhealthy, and then repeat the cycle over again. The same guy that taught me that framework said that the way out in any of those stages is honesty.
Okay, let's help these people out. Let's help them figure out, okay, for rest days, if we were going to create rest days, but not actually just rest, not just lounge around and waste that time. For rest days in property management, what would we do to implement what we'll call now active recovery days, active recovery times, or even an hour? What would you say we would want to start with, or what are a couple of ideas that we could suggest for people to be able to create a calendar, a schedule, or just their responsibilities that allow them to be fresh when they're actually doing them?
Yeah. The thing I like that you mentioned is basically being deliberate about it. Let's if we compare this to running, do you know in advance when your active recovery days are going to be?
I do. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, are we letting life happen to us as property managers, or are we approaching life deliberately? And if we approach life deliberately, if we sort of assert our control over our schedule, or we at least make sure that first things come first, and we prioritize our active recovery, I think that comes first. I think it has to be put in the calendar. So I have a couple of routines that I put in my calendar. From Monday morning from 8 a.m. till 10:30 a.m. I do nothing except read and journal. It's an important way for me to start my week. Coming right off the weekend, I get some good ideas. I get to refuel. Reading and thinking of ideas and journaling about ideas gives me energy. It helps me feel centered and focused, and it stimulates ideas that I can share with others. And when I share those ideas with others, that also gives me energy. So for me, that reading and journaling time is a very important of active recovery. And just like you put your active recovery and running in your schedule in advance, I try to do the same thing.
Okay, before we jump on to the next one, I have to point out how interesting it is to me that you schedule that right off the bat to start your week. You would think, okay, I've been off for Saturday, Sunday. I got to jump in and see. I got to get into my email. I got to see all of these. I got to see who needs me. I got to get in. I can't make people wait till noon on a Monday to talk to me. The business week started at Monday at 8 o'clock. So what was your thought process, your intention behind that?
Well, I once read in a book that, and I think this is true with me, that our best thinking hours for many of us are in the morning, where we're having our best ideas, our most creative ideas, we're most impactful in the day. I've also heard someone say that the more the effectiveness of your decisions decreases the more decisions you make in any given day. And so I'm trying to be deliberate about preserving the very best, the most optimal hours of my day for the highest value activities, which for me are learning, thinking deeply, creating, being intentional, learning things that I can share with others. And that routine is only possible because I've decided that my value in the world is not contingent on me being highly available and highly responsive. Now, as a company, we want to be highly responsive, and I've hired people to ensure that we're highly responsive to communication. But myself, as the leader, I used to think that the locus of my value was in being highly responsive and highly engaged and highly involved in the details. I since learned and decided that my greatest value to others is when I'm not whipsawed into action at anyone's beck and call. And so then I blocked off time when I'm just not available, and the people around me want to preserve and protect that time.
So I'm interested. How many hours do you spend at the office on an average day?
I'm usually here from 8:30 to 4:30.
Okay, and in that time, you're there. How many hours or how many appointments do you think that you have? Are you scheduled just I'm going to maximize. I'm here, so I want to get the most out of it. Am I doing appointments back to back to back so that I can cram in as much value so that while I'm here, I'm creating the most value for my team, my clients, my partners, the people that I am collaborating with, or do you have a different approach to that?
Well, if I'm not careful, my schedule can get very full. I give out my Calendly link to people who I want to talk to. I have recurring meetings with all of my one-on-ones. I have one-on-one meetings every week with every one of my direct reports. And right now I feel like I'm a little heavy there. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 direct reports, which feels a little heavy for me. And if I'm building momentum around something or somebody's newer in the role, I might meet with them 2 or 3 times in a week. And so if I'm not intentional about first putting that big rock in my schedule, like this is sacred time, nobody can schedule here, and I've got like 2 or 3 big blocks like that a week. Another one that's really important for me, if we're talking about active recovery, is every Thursday morning until noon is sacred time. It's me and my wife. We hang out at home and we just do things that are connecting. We try not to do chores and try not to run errands. We just connect because we've got kids and life is crazy. And every night we're running the girls to dance, practice and whatever else, right? So to answer your question, there are days. Tuesday's my heavy day. I'm doing an all company meeting at 9. I'm doing a one-on-one at 9:30. I'm doing another one-on-one at 10:30. And so by the time I'm out of those, I'm a little frazzled, and I usually want a half an hour or an hour. The other thing I did with Calendly is I configured Calendly to not book back-to-back appointments. When they're requested external people wanting to meet with me, I require there's a half-hour buffer between. One of the mistakes I made early on is I would overschedule myself. I would think I can do anything, and I wouldn't put any buffers in my calendar. Man, I have learned that's just a bad idea. And not to ever book meetings on Monday morning or Friday afternoon, or not to ever book anything before 9 a.m. in the morning, because even though I'm in the chair at 8:30, if I don't have time to calibrate myself and get myself, my mindset right, I'm not going to be effective for that day.
Yeah, we have very similar approaches to that. The outside of this meeting where you and I sit down to have our chats, I don't schedule hour-long meetings. I figured out a long time ago that hour-long meetings are half-hour meetings that take an hour. And so really getting internal meetings are very short, concise, half-hour meetings. Client meetings, at the very longest, they're 50 minutes. Every single hour, I take 10 minutes to myself, every hour. And that helps me come back and be a little bit more fresh with the next person who needs my attention, because I want to give my best when I'm talking to somebody, and to go 3-hour appointments back to back is just it's not allowing me to deliver my best.
I've been listening to. I actually have a business coach right now that's walking me through the some Bob Proctor training called Thinking into Results, and it's kind of old school Dale Carnegie and that type of stuff, Think and Grow Rich type stuff. But one of the things that I really like about it is it's this idea that we get to intentionally decide who we're going to be in life. Life doesn't happen to us. Thoughts don't just come into our mind, and they shouldn't just govern where we are. We should be actively introducing the most positive, optimistic, forward-looking, bright vision of ourselves and of our lives, intentionally putting that stuff into our brains. I was talking with my dad Monday night this week, and one of his favorite books is Cybernetics. If you haven't read it, strongly recommend it. This plastic surgeon, noticed that over his career he would change the way people looked. And some people then, and there were two very distinct different responses. Some people would change their entire self-image and their outlook on their life, and everything would elevate to meet that new outlook that they had of themselves. Other people would still focus on, well, there's where the scar used to be, and yep, I see, I could still kind of see it, whatever, and then they wouldn't level up. And so, what is it that self-image has to do with how we live and how we expect to live? So that's one idea that I think is really powerful. If we're using active recovery time to positively contribute to our self-image, or to fuel ourselves with the right energy that will support that self-image that is the highest version of ourselves. And for me, that's reading, it's getting enough sleep, it's doing some exercise. I haven't been eating healthy recently, but eating healthy would be another component of that. What are we doing to decide intentionally, first of all, the person that we want to be, and get a really clear picture about that and the goals we want to achieve and who we need to be to achieve those goals. And then secondly, constantly be fueling ourselves with the energy, spiritual energy, physical energy, emotional energy, so that it can back up that commitment we've made to ourselves that I'm living at this level now.
I think that's something that's really important, that most of our recordings so far, most of our shows have been a little bit about the business, a little bit about tactics, a lot about strategy, a lot about building a great business. But one thing that you and I talk a lot about is oftentimes when we think the business is broken, it's not the business that's broken, it's the business owner that's broken. And you've hit on some really key concepts, I think, in the fact that we do have the right. Now, obviously, some things have to fall in place. Things have to work out in a certain order. But I agree with you that we have the right to decide who we're going to be. We have the power to create our future selves. And then it just takes discipline to get there. And I think a lot of people, and I think this is great timing for the first of the year, because a lot of people are looking at what are my goals for 2025? And some people are just not going to set them because they just don't set goals, or they'll set them and they make it, I'm going to go to the gym 5 times a week. And by the time they're listening to this podcast, they've already stopped going. They bought a membership on January 1st. Congratulations. This is your reminder, everybody that bought a gym membership on January 1st and have stopped going already. Cancel your membership.
Actually, go to the gym.
Go to the gym. That's better. That's a better approach. But you know, we as business owners, I think we spend a lot of time focused on trying to build our business, trying to build our team, but none of that is going to be as effective as if we start first by trying to build ourselves and trying to spend time on figuring out how can I be the best person that I can be, so that I can show up the best ways I can show up, so that I can have the most contribution to my team, my family, and everybody around me.
100%. It's not that we need to be driving towards fill in the blank size property management business. It's that we need to be driving towards the person who leads the fill in the blank size property management business. If I want a property management business doing $20 million a year in revenue, then how do I become the person first that acts like and thinks like and behaves like the $20 million a year gross revenue property management business owner? You don't walk up to a fireplace and expect it to produce fire, expect heat. You create the conditions. You put the wood in place and you light it on fire. You create that condition, and then the heat naturally reverberates around the fireplace. We don't intentionally. We're not intentionally like trying to drive toward heat. We're building character. We're building the version of ourselves that naturally, inherently intersects with our goals, because in a matter-of-fact way, that's the level at which we are living. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, I think you would relate to this. As a matter of fact, I know you will. But when people will ask me, every once in a while, they'll say, you know, running 200 miles, that is insane. Why do you do it? And my response is generally, when they ask me why I do it, is it's not about the destination. It's not about the achievement. It's not the things I achieve. It's the person I become along the way. It's figuring out that at one point that was an unimaginable goal to hit. Now, to me, it's just something I plan for on a routine basis. And even if you don't like running, you can still relate to the fact that before I could achieve that goal, I had to believe that I could become that person to achieve that goal and put myself in that situation where I am capable. Now I need the skill set. Like I'm confident in achieving, but I need the skill set.
You got really clear about what you wanted. You had a really clear picture of it, and then you figured out there was a path to becoming the type of person that naturally intersected with that future vision. And then you focused on the strategy, the routines. Vern Harnish wrote a book called Scaling Up, and he's one of the founders, I think the founder of Entrepreneur Organization. Vern Harnish said, most successful businesses are not successful by accident. They engage in the right routines. Routine is the predictor of success. And so once we get a really clear vision and we're audacious and bold enough to believe that we can become the person that can intersect with that vision, not that we're forcefully taking ourselves at the current version of ourselves and we're forcefully driving to that outcome. That's not how it works. We get a really clear, audacious view of some future outcome. And by the way, if we can conceive it, we can and believe it, then we can achieve it, right? And so inherent in our ability to conceive of some future bold, audacious goal is the ability to be able to achieve that. But it's not because we're taking ourself in our current state and forcefully driving to that outcome. We're elevating the vibration of our life to the point where we will naturally intersect with that outcome. And then we do the things that put us, the things that are elevating us are the right routines. You found the right coach. You found the right training routines. You did those routines with accountability and consistency, not perfectly. And you got there, and one of those routines was active recovery.
Yep. You mentioned something about consistency there, and I want to just drive that home. I talk about incremental progress over time equals incredible results. It's not how do I get from here to the end of this next mile. It's how do I take the next step, and then the next step, and the next step. I still know that the next mile is there, and then I know the next mile is the next thing, and the next mile is the next thing after that. But it's being consistent with that incremental progress. How can I make incremental progress today that I can stack progress on tomorrow? And I think one of the things that I've learned is my coach, he puts on my schedule, on my calendar, 2 weeks in advance. He's got my routine of what I need to do. It's on my calendar. And I think in business, we need to be doing the same thing, especially with our personal time, our active recovery time.
You talked about just the next step, a really powerful learning lesson I got from running. I once read a book, I can't remember the book, about running, and the guy compared running. He said, you got to practice running. And I thought, practice running? Are you out of your mind? We run. We've known how to run since we were 3 years old. We run. That's what we do. He said, you got to practice running. He said, just like a juggler trains their muscles, forgive me if I said this in one of our conversations before, just like a juggler trains their muscles through thousands of hours of practice to do something so precise. A runner, if they're intentional, is also practicing running. And this is a really powerful metaphor for me for life and business, because I used to take the act of running for granted. I used to think there's certain things I need to do to become the best runner. And eventually I found out there were things I needed to do in a certain way to become the best runner I could possibly. And this is the same and true in business. So the idea is, it's not that we're lacking the knowledge of certain things to do. It's that we're not doing things the certain way. And when I started running, we're putting our feet down tens of thousands of times when we run a long distance, right? When I started paying attention to and attending a focus to each footfall, how could I make this footfall a little bit more efficient? Running is all about moving your body the maximum distance with the least energy expenditure. And the muscles fine-tune themselves over time. You and I can spot a runner on the road and know how long they've been running. We can.
Yeah.
You can tell. And a runner that has practiced a lot has a certain gait that their body is moving extremely efficiently with the least energy expenditure. And so I think there's something to that.
Yeah. So we want to keep it consistent. We want to build progress over time. We want to have it on the calendar. And then I think in order for us to continue with that momentum that we start to build is we've got to keep records of that. And, there's a saying in the running community, if it ain't on Strava, it didn't happen, right? So tracking your activity, tracking your progress. And I think that goes the same for businesses. And a lot of people, I don't know why, but I've been having a lot of conversations lately with people about the gap in the gain. And there's a book by Dan Sullivan. Dan Sullivan's the author, right?
Dan Sullivan, yep.
Yeah. And some people will look at the gap, how far they have left to go, and other people will look at the gain, how far you've come. And I think it's important to look at both, to be content with where you are, how far you've made it, but not be satisfied because you still have the rest of the journey to go. And I think it's really important that we start keeping records with our business, our goals, the things that we've accomplished. I think, aren't you the one that told me about your notebooks that you track where you highlight things? Was that you?
No.
Oh, well, this is going to be awkward. Okay.
It's only awkward because you said it's going to be awkward.
Yeah.
I can lean into this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, somebody that I know writes a list of all the things that they're going to do. They handwrite their to-do list, and whatever. That's good for them. But what they do is, instead of like crossing it out or scribbling it out or putting a check marks when it's done, they highlight it in yellow, and it just stands off the page. So when they're having a rough day, they just open that notebook and they just flip through and see all the yellow, and it's just great. Okay, it's an energy boost to see, okay, I've actually done quite a bit here.
That's active recovery. Gratitude journaling, celebrating wins. We have a routine every month where we have a business coach that facilitates a monthly leadership meeting where it's an accountability meeting. But a very important part of that meeting is headlines. What happened? How did we win? We return a report and we celebrate when we got some progress on projects that we're all working on, and then we talk about headlines. And then we have a tab in that spreadsheet for each month that we can go back and look at those. And certainly at the end of the year, we take time, at least an hour or two, and we celebrate where we've come and what we've learned. That builds tremendous energy. So if we're talking about gaining energy in order to level ourselves up, in our vibrations so that we just naturally intersect with the goals that we're aiming at, and through active recovery should be building energy. It should be doing things like celebrating wins, recognizing wins.
Yeah. And as part of active recovery, we've already addressed the calendar issue, but I want to circle back around to that because I think I want to drive home, not that anybody ever needs my permission to do anything, but I want to reaffirm that having something on your calendar that is for you, when somebody comes up and says, hey, can we have a 3:00 meeting? I got to talk to you about something. And you already have something on the calendar. That's your protected time. That's your space. It is very much okay to say, I'm sorry, I'd love to meet with you, but I have a previous commitment. You need to hold true to your own commitments to yourself so that, again, you can come back refreshed.
Yeah, I don't know why that just connected with another idea that might seem a little bit disconnected, but I'll explain the connection in my brain. I once sat through a previous life. I was a land broker, and I went to this seminar one time, or a presentation by one of the best-known developers in the greater Phoenix area that does a lot of super centers and with Target as the anchor, et cetera. And he made a comment that really stuck with me. He says, we limit our own incompetence with our equity. In other words, we don't go out and raise equity. We limit our incompetence with our own capital as the equity for these projects. And so what if? So this is a little abstract, but I just thought of while you were talking, our time is our most valuable currency. Our time is our most valuable currency. And what if we protected ourselves from our own incompetent waste of that most valuable currency by absolutely being unyielding on giving up those times that we've already predetermined are for ourselves, for our investment, for our building? We've made that decision when we were clear-headed. It sounded like a good idea. We've heard lots of smart people say it's a good idea. Okay, be true to that, and don't encroach into that, because you're spending that time. If you have to forego appointments in order to protect that time, you're limiting your incompetence in the wasteful spending of your time. Lean into that. Accept that.
Yeah. Good stuff. Okay, let's figure out how can we help everyone get this year off to a good start. We already talked about that. We already talked about the calendaring, protecting our time. What else can we suggest? What have you done? I could talk about what I've done to be intentional about the new year.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. I'm just going to be raw about this. Read your scriptures, go to church, and say your prayers. So if you're not religious and you hate me for saying that, I'm sorry. I didn't mean you any ill will. But for me, those are some of the most important things. Try to gather my family around. We pray together. We read scriptures. We go to church. We try to keep, in my faith, we try to keep the Sabbath day holy. The Sabbath is the day of rest. If we unplug and we try not to listen to music or watch TV or videos, and we go to church together, that is such a powerful routine of recharging and re-energizing and connecting with a higher power. I don't know how you can do it without doing that. That brings so much joy, so much relief, so much rest into my life weekly.
Yep. So religious or not, I think everybody can identify with the fact that you are recentering yourself and you are taking time to focus on the important things in life so that you can start the week out on the right foot with the right mindset.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's build on that. So now we've centered ourselves, we've spent some time with scripture, spent time with God, and now let's go out into the week, the month, the year. Let's get this 2025 kicked off. What else do you say that would help people get this 2025 kicked off on the right foot?
I think it's all about routines. I think it's about reclaim your calendar. Absolutely put in the blocks of things. Connect with your unique ability, whatever that is. Mine is thinking about and learning about new abstract ideas and then trying to synthesize those and sharing them with other people in a way that helps benefit them. That gives me energy. It's a gift that I have. My team enjoys it when I do that. So put those routines in place. And then there's monthly and quarterly routines too. Celebrate the wins monthly. Put a meeting cadence, even if your team is small. Put in a 2 to 3 hour meeting once a month that recurs every single month. And then don't postpone it. I met with a guy that I'm mentoring yesterday, and he's like, "Yeah, I put these meetings in my calendar, but then I just kind of blow through them, or something urgent comes up, and I just schedule over it." I don't do it. Get an agenda that lives in that appointment. Get religious about that agenda. Get that routine in place. A lot of us that are entrepreneurs, Tony, just have the ability to move from activity to activity, and we bounceability, they call it, and we can pivot quickly, and we can change to different activities quickly, and we can overload our schedules. Some of us, speaking from personal experience, lack structure and routine. I think you're a lot more structured and routine than I am, but I learned eventually routine will set you free. Routine will set you free. Commit to the routines and build in the restful activities that keep you at your best for this year.
Okay, so let's dive into that a little bit more on the routine side. I want to ask you a question. Have you ever fallen down on a trail run?
Yes, absolutely.
What do you do?
If, it's how often and when.
Right. Yeah. So what do you do about that?
Well, depending on how bad it is, sometimes you pick up your phone and you look at it and you see it's cracked and you try not to swear.
Those days happen, right? But hopefully that's not the norm. Hopefully you're not breaking a phone a week.
Yeah. Yeah, you get back up. You get back up. You decide if you can keep going, if you need to turn around, if it's bad enough.
Yeah. So I think a lot of times people are afraid to set a routine, set a goal, go after something because they're afraid of failure. And I get it. I mean, nobody truly likes to fail, but I think if you start to adopt the attitude that success is built on the foundation of failure, where I just know in order to succeed, I'm going to have to fail at this a few times. And so if I'm going to put some appointments on my calendar and I'm going to protect that time and I fail, just like at the beginning of the recording here where we were talking about the gym, people spot a gym membership on the first of the month. Maybe it's the middle of January now. They committed to going 3-4 days a week and they've been twice. Okay, cool. Like, you fell down. Get back up. Commit to that schedule, commit to that routine, and commit to that incremental progress to achieve the goal that you want to achieve through that routine. It's not too late to get back up.
Absolutely. And one other thought came to mind as you were describing that. Sometimes we need help from other people. Like, let's ask for the help we need. Man, how many years did I waste thinking that I could do everything on my own and that I'm smart enough and I'm capable enough and doggone it, I just got to put all these routines in place. I've been working with a business coach now for 7 years. Same guy. He knows me really well at this point. Every time that I notice that there's an important routine, I'm having trouble implementing it or staying consistent with it, sometimes I ask him to join me at that time, that day, every week, until I solidify that routine. And that's a powerful thing. I was having trouble with the structure of my one-on-one meetings with a key member of my team. He sat in 3 weeks in a row. We ironed things out. We built some momentum. That's a powerful thing. If you know something's important, if there's a routine that you're getting, it's hard to put in place, download a habit tracker on your phone or ask someone to be with you, even if you have to pay them. Be with me while I'm trying to set this routine in place. I need it for momentum. And then get launched. 85% of the fuel in a rocket on the way to the moon is burned in the first 8 minutes. There's a reason. It takes tremendous effort up front to start the momentum on something. But once that routine, that flywheel's moving, that routine's in place, it can have significant compounding power to your benefit.
I know you and I have talked about this before. I don't remember if we've talked about it on the show or not, but you know, the first time I went out and ran the Moab 240, I finished in just over 99 hours and 42 minutes. And so I know I'm capable of doing it on my own. I know I have the skill set. I learned what to do. I put in the effort. I did the training. I stuck to routine. But the guy that won the race that year set the course record and actually wound up winning all 3 races of the Triple Crown at one point, but in the same year. But the guy that won it in 55 hours and some odd minutes. So he had basically 2 full days and nights to go do whatever. I don't know what he was doing. I was still out there running and puking and doing the things that you do on these long distance races. But I was smart enough to say that person is further ahead on this trail than I am. He's further ahead in his career, in his running career, than I am. I need to know him. So even though I had the skill set to do it myself, even though I had put in the time, I hired him. And I went, that year I finished 92nd place. The next year I hired him. I took his system. He helped keep me accountable. There were days I was doing my core exercises. I didn't want to do it, but I knew that he'd be looking. And I went back and finished in the top 10, finished in just over 80 hours. So cut 20 hours off my time. So it's sometimes just finding somebody that can help you. Again, you know, I recommend getting a coach for whatever you're trying to work on. Get a coach. But even if it's not a coach, get an accountability buddy. Get somebody that can help you dream big, because we had a couple of other items on the list that I don't think we'll get to, but one of the things we talked about is running a property management is hard. And one of the reasons it's hard is because it's lonely. You're the only one doing it, and there's not a lot of people in your company you can talk to. And so just having somebody else that you can share your experience with goes a long way to help you getting through the dark times, getting back into the recovery days, and then getting back out on the course.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't be overstated. So important. Be deliberate, build the team around you, build the accountability structures in place, reach out for help when you're having trouble building momentum, find the right coaches. When we spend enough time, see, it goes back to this idea of becoming the person who is living the type of life that just naturally intersects with the goals that we have in mind. One of the most powerful ways we can do that is by rubbing shoulders with those kind of people that already have those results, and have a coach and have a peer mentorship group. Like, all of those things, I think, are critical.
Yeah. Mindset is one of the most contagious things on the planet. You can either catch a good one or you can catch a bad one, but you're catching something. Right.
And I add to that, I think the default mindset, we all struggle with head trash. There's a great book called Head Trash that I finished recently. We all struggle with head trash. It is the default MO that we have head trash going through our brains. That is the default. So if we do nothing, if we're talking about the difference between active recovery and just being relaxed or doing nothing, the default of doing nothing is that we're getting these intrusive negative thoughts all of the time. And so we have to hold that at bay and intentionally introduce positive thoughts in order for us to level up our character, be really intentional. The lack of intentionality is what causes us to devolve into the worst version of ourselves if we just accept the thoughts and the emotions that come to us.
Yeah, that takes me to a saying that we say in the ultra running community, which is motion is medicine. Right? Being in motion. You mentioned just, and it kind of reminded me, I had this vision while you were talking about that of a little kid in the summertime standing on the edge of the pool. His friends are all in the pool, splashing around, having a good time, laughing and giggling, and he's standing there on the edge of the pool, wanting so bad to jump in, but he's afraid to jump in. And the longer he stands there, the harder it gets. And I think in business, we're the same way. The longer we want to do something, the more we talk about implementing a self-showing software, or implementing a new fee structure, or changing our management agreement to exclude dealing with insurance companies, or whatever it is, the longer we wait, the more head trash we create, and the harder it is to just jump in and, figure it out, deal with the splashes, deal with getting wet, deal with the pool being cold for 2 minutes, and then all of a sudden everything is fine and you wind up having a great time.
Absolutely.
All right, Mark. Well, we're about at the end here. What do you got to say to wrap us up?
Well, I'm saying whoever came in here for this aid station stop, for the next sprint that you're going, or the next little leg of this ultra race that you're on, go out there and count your blessings, count all the wins. Don't run faster than you have the strength to run. Pace yourself. Remember, it's continuous effort, not just the pace that you're going at, that matters in the long run to win that race. And glad that you came in here for some active recovery.
Yeah. So I know we talked about having people reach out either to a coach, to a mentor, to somebody. I want to invite the audience. I know you didn't know I was going to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. If you've set your 2025 goals, if you said this is something I want to change in my business, and you want to reach out to one of us to just say, hey, can you hold me to this? Can you hold me accountable? And we'll create something that makes it easy for them to do that. And they want to reach out to us. I'll go ahead and include my email in the show notes. If you want to do the same, Mark, we can do that. But I want to just encourage people.
Yeah, happy to do it.
Yep. Let's find somebody that can help us dream bigger, be bigger, do bigger, and let's have a bigger impact in the world.
Let's go.
All right, you've been at this aid station long enough. Let's get you back out on the trail. Get out there. All right, we'll see you next time at the next stop.
See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Property Management Success Podcast. We'll be back with another value-packed episode to help you level up your property management game. If you've got something valuable out of today's episode, please share it with a friend or colleague, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so you never miss out on future insights and strategies and tactics. Until next time, here's to your success.